Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our pre-meeting. I am calling it to order. And our agenda review by Mr. Bostwick, please.
In 2021 public hearing. Next, we have PLN-REZ-2020 512 South Battlefield Boulevard, with the applicant requesting a continuance to the July 14, 2021 public hearing. Then PLN-REZ-2020-024 Portlock Square, with the applicant requesting a continuance to the July 14, 2021 public hearing. And finally, we have PLN-COMP-2021-001, the 2050 Master Transportation Plan Amendment, with staff requesting a continuance to the September 8, 2021 public hearing. And tonight we have 3 items on the consent agenda. However, for one of the items, staff is now requesting a continuance to the July 14, 2021 public hearing due to a change in the status of the application's legal paperwork and the need for the applicant to resubmit an amended document. This is item number 6 on your agenda, and it is PLN-REZ-2020-015 Watson Woods, which is a request for a conditional zoning reclassification of approximately 5.6 acres from A1 Agricultural District to R15S Residential District. The other items on consent are PLN-USC-2021-002 Carolina Road Horse Boarding and Veteran Counseling, which is a request for a conditional use permit to operate a horse boarding facility and equine assisted therapy business as a level 2 home occupation, and a request for an alternative parking service. And finally, we have PLN-USC-2021-007 City Park Flagpole, which is a request for a conditional use permit to allow a 100-foot flagpole height at City Park. And we'll move on to the regular agenda, and it's Mr. McNamara's.
Good evening, everyone. So our item that's coming up for you right now, this is PLN-REZ 2018-018. This is the Crestfield rezoning. And this is a request to rezone approximately 120 acres from B1 Neighborhood Business District, A1 Agricultural District, and R15S Residential District to R10S Residential District and A1 Agricultural District for the purpose of developing nearly 65 acres of the property with 150 dwelling units. As you'll see on the screen, this property is subject to the proffers associated with the Transamerica rezonings, which took place in 1988 and 1995. Transamerica Properties extends well beyond the boundary of this request and spans nearly 570 acres. We'll get into the relationship of how the proffers of Transamerica rezoning affect this request a little bit later, but first, let's talk about what this request is. As you'll see on the screen, the applicant is proposing a development that will be associated as depicted on the general development plan. This depicts a typical suburban layout with front-loaded single-family dwellings. Access is proposed off of Elbow Road via 2 points. However, the applicant has provided for the proposed alignment of the Southeastern Expressway, which is still currently located on the 2050 plan. But as we know, there has been an initiated resolution requesting Planning Commission to make recommendations regarding that roadway, and that will be considered at some point in the future. The property is also located adjacent to an unimproved city park parcel. The applicant has provided both for pedestrian and vehicular access to this parcel through their property. Much of the northern property is impacted by jurisdictional wetlands, and as such, no development is proposed in this location, and the applicant is proposing to rezone this portion of the property to A1 Agricultural District. Roadway improvements are proposed along Elbow Road, which include the construction of left turn lanes, taper, as well as widening. Within the development, the proffers have been offered regarding street sections, which locate street trees between the sidewalk and the edge of pavement, which is a preferred design standard. In addition, the applicant has also offered a $500,000 cash proffer for road facilities. This is specifically being offered due to the fact that the performance of the intersection of Elbow Road and Centerville Turnpike would fail with the proposed development, but it should be noted that as this is a downzoning to B1, from B1 to R10S, this project is technically exempt from LOS. However, the performance of the road will be noted as such. Proffered elevations have been submitted, depicted 2-story single-family dwellings with front porches and varied roof lines. Each unit will have a garage. The applicant has also proffered exterior building materials. However, it should be noted that staff has requested that vinyl be removed from the permitted materials list, and that has not been done as of yet. Likewise, in order to be consistent with other developments in the area, staff requests that all foundations be at least 16 inches in height, but as it stands right now, the proffers require an 8-inch foundation. The applicant is proposing off-site dedication of 15 acres to assist with the City Elbow Road project. The applicant has estimated the value of this land to be approximately $315,000. City estimates come between $67,000 and $112,000 for that. So, at this point, let's take a deep breath and examine the relationship between the proposed request and the existing proffers with the Transamerica property, and to point out their relationship to each other. If approved, this request would be a carve-out from the property with the obligations of the previous proffers. The development and the proffers associated with the Transamerica property anticipate a large development with single-family, townhouse, and multifamily residential sections. The anticipated impacts from this development were proposed to be mitigated from an extensive proffer package. This included a fire station, a park site, park improvements, public utility improvements, roadway improvements, a school site, and bike and pedestrian facilities, among others. The underlying zoning that would permit this large-scale development still does exist, as much of the property is zoned RMF1, RTH1. As a result, those anticipated impacts still exist, and there's no proposal to rezone those properties at this time. This brings us back to the original proffer discussion. The applicant is requesting this rezoning to carve out this parcel from the Transamerica rezoning, with the exception that the number of units that are being proposed with this would also count towards specific unit triggers associated with park and roadway improvements. Now, one of the largest issues that still stands is in regards to the proffered school site. The proffers require the dedication of a developable school site between 15 and 20 acres in phase 1 of the development. Phase 1, which is shown on the screen, has already been completed. A site was originally dedicated, but due to wetlands on the property, it was deemed by schools to be not developable and returned to the applicant. No school site has been dedicated since. 291 dwelling units have been developed on Transamerica property and have not been mitigated yet. The applicant has stated, due to the reduced development potential because of wetland impacts, the school site is no longer necessary, and they do not believe, and they do not have the land to dedicate a school site. Instead, they propose a cash proffer for the 150 units associated with Crestfield in the amount of $1,591 per unit for a total of $238,650, which is consistent with proffer policy. It should be noted that a preliminary value estimate for the school site is approximately $2.5 million. Recently, the applicant has filed an application for an accelerated proffer modification that will be considered by City Council. This request would remove the required dedication of a school site and will replace it with a cash lump sum payment of $50,000 for the existing development and $1,591 for each additional unit with a yearly escalator. However, that request has not been considered as of yet, so the issue of the school proffers does remain as it currently stands. As such, for the findings specifically listed in the staff report, staff does recommend denial of this request, and I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Do we have any questions?
Yes, please. Since the original zoning of the site and today, how has the change in wetlands classification caused this to be changed? Because I know there's been a lot of changes in the last 20 years.
I would actually defer to their team to answer that question, and specifically how wetlands have changed on their specific site. We all know that regulations have increased over the years, and it has severely impacted their ability to develop the site from what was originally anticipated. But it should be noted that their team would have much more specifics on the exact impact on what wetlands have had on their proposed development.
Thank you.
I have a question for Ms. Lindley, and you can answer it now or later. I just want to understand the impacts of this accelerated proffer from a legal standpoint and what we can and cannot consider tonight.
Well, the accelerated proffer modification is a statutory authority, and it will permit the consideration of that proffer to go straight to City Council. And so it will not come to the Planning Commission. That is a pending matter. Council has not set it on an agenda, but I expect it will go up very, very soon. And so for purposes of your review, I think it's something that's helpful to know, although you cannot guarantee that it's on a council agenda and how council will vote on that item. But it is illuminating as to the circumstances of the application.
Thank you.
Mr. McNamara?
All right, our next item is agenda item number 9, and this is a request to amend the zoning ordinance to facilitate 2 categories of changes. The first is to remove application fees from the zoning ordinance, and the second is an amendment of application requirements for rezonings and conditional use permits. With regards to fees, the fee rate of many planning applications are set in the zoning ordinance. Each fall, the city begins the preparation of an operational budget for each department, and as part of this process, departments take stock of anticipated revenues generated from these fees. And as is the case in the past year, the planning department has proposed raising fees to come more in line with the regional average. This made the budgeting process very difficult, as the projected increase from the fees is completely hypothetical because the zoning ordinance requires amending. Instead, the ability exists for City Council to adopt a fee schedule as part of the budgeting process. This streamlines the process and allows City Council to assess the budget in connection to proposed fees and increases and render a decision based on the information presented to them at that time. It should be stated that this change will not change fees other than to remove them from the zoning ordinance. The actual rate of fees will be considered by City Council at their June 22nd public hearing. Regarding the application requirements, one of the biggest complaints that we get from the development community involves application requirements as compared to other jurisdictions. The proposed text amendment will modify multiple application requirements as detailed in your staff report. It should be noted that regardless of these changes, the provision still exists that states, and this is quoted directly, notwithstanding criteria listed above, the planning director, the planning commission, or the city council may at any time during the review process find that essential information is lacking and may deem the application incomplete and defer further review or action until such time the information is provided. This means that information is, if the information that is provided is insufficient based on the specific circumstances and the nature of the request, staff, the decision makers, can request additional information to provide information necessary to make informed decisions regarding the request. As such, we do recommend approval of this request and are available to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
I
Oh,
have
sorry.
one question, again, for Ms. Lindley, and that just, in the Virginia Code, there's nothing that says it has to be in our zoning ordinance like this, is there?
It states that zoning ordinance fees may be adopted into the text, and many localities use this model that Chesapeake is going to move toward, where they basically promulgate them annually as part of the budget.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. McNamara. Planning Commission committee reports and old business. I sent the ARC report yesterday, and you also have a copy at your places. Under our upcoming items, summary of new public hearing applications received. Mr. Bostwick.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question about the ARC report?
Sure.
On the PUD request you have for the, I think this is a QVC site on the back page. Is this actually the QVC building they have, or is some vacant property they have there trying to do multifamily, do you know?
Yes, it's both.
Oh, okay, thank you.
This month's summary of new applications in the pipeline includes 1 residential rezoning, 3 conditional use permits, and 1 PUD creation, a reapplication for the retreat at Lake Thrasher. We have 1 initiated text amendment this month, that is PLN-TXT-2021-006, and that is a fee schedule for subdivision ordinance to remove that fee schedule from the subdivision ordinance so that fees can be more easily amended and adopted within each annual budget. It's very similar to the zoning, removing the application fees out of the zoning ordinance. It's a companion, if you will. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Woodward, you are up for an overview of the Dominion Boulevard corridor study.
Well, good evening. It's good to see you all. Madam Vice Chair, members, commissioners, thank you for this opportunity. And I'm prepared to be very brief, but we have a little ahead of a schedule, so I may slow down just a little bit. But again, I appreciate the opportunity to give you an overview and an update on the Dominion Boulevard corridor study. What I'm going to be covering essentially is a little bit of background on how the study came to be for some of the newer commissioners. I will also be covering for you how we've been implementing and monitoring the study through the development review process, and then briefly covering some of the future challenges and opportunities with the study and the study area. So just to give you a bit of background on the study, the 2035 Comprehensive Plan included an action strategy to plan for the Dominion Boulevard corridor as a major activity center. The 2035 Land Use Plan included what we call a placeholder land use designation, which was essentially a regional mixed use category. We still have that in some sections of the city for the land use plan, and in fact it was covering a significant part of this study area prior to this Dominion Boulevard corridor study being adopted. The Dominion Boulevard Bridge and Roadway Improvement Project was a key catalyst to begin proactively planning for development in this area. It was recognized that once the old steel bridge and Dominion Boulevard was improved, that would really open up possibilities for development south of the Intracoastal Waterway. The fiscal year 2013-2014 capital budget included funding in the amount of about $346,000 allocated to a professional land use and planning consultant design workshop to conduct the study, assisting staff in that regard. The very first thing that was done with this study was to perform a market analysis before any potential land use planning scenarios were begun. The entire project began with a very thorough market analysis to determine what the feasibility was for development in the area and the potential for it being a major activity center and regional employment center. And in short, the analysis did determine that this could be a regional employment center, I think the 7th one in Hampton Roads, and that in particular it would not compete with Greenbrier. The study, after quite a bit of time, over almost 3 years, was from when it was initiated, was adopted by City Council on November 15th, 2016, after significant stakeholder input, multiple public meetings, focus groups, staff attending various civic leagues, chamber meetings, those types of things. And then ultimately, the Planning Commission, when it came before this body, conducted a series of 6 or 7 special work sessions in the summer of 2016 before eventually recommending it for approval to City Council. And then I believe they had 3 or 4 special work sessions themselves devoted to the study. Sorry, I'm forgetting to move my... So as it is with the comprehensive plan, some of the more recognizable policy elements are the large maps, as we say, the master transportation plan, the land use plan. So this is the master land use plan specifically for the Dominion Boulevard corridor study. You'll see that the study area itself is quite large. It was around 10,000 acres, which basically ran from the southern branch of the Elizabeth River in the northern reaches, and then heading southward, obviously along Dominion Boulevard, on either side of Dominion Boulevard. But also it was determined early on that it would be beneficial to include the Chesapeake Executive Airport in the study area because of its importance to the city and long-term plans to try to improve that airport. So that is the study area. The mix of land uses that you see, I know it's a little bit hard to see even probably on your slides, but you'll see similar types of land uses for this study as you would see with the city's entire land use plan. It really promotes walkable mixed-use neighborhoods and districts connected by complete streets and greenways in the northern portions. You can kind of see a concentration of land uses in what we call Area 3 or the Shillelagh North area, and then a little bit to the west in what we call Area 6, which is kind of the convergence of Dominion Boulevard and Route 17. And again, the idea is to create sort of an employment center nexus in those locations, as well as opportunities for live, work, and play lifestyles in a very unique setting. A lot of the study area was preserved for rural and agricultural, continued rural and open space uses. You'll see the kind of the white area that's in the lower third between the airport and the northern reaches. And then we allowed for a couple of opportunity sites, 2 areas, again, in the northernmost part of the study area, along the southern branch of the Elizabeth River on either side of Dominion Boulevard, and then a large opportunity area just west of the airport, part of which is already designated for light industrial on the land use plan. We paid a lot of respect and tried to preserve environmentally sensitive lands in the area, the forested areas, wet areas, organize those into a regional open space network that connects to the Dismal Swamp Canal Trail and the refuge. So as far as transitioning to how we have been implementing the plan since its adoption, one of the main ways that we've been doing that is through the development review process. As developments come along, we review them in light of the recommendations and policies of the Dominion Boulevard corridor study. One of the key things that's been a follow-on from when the study was adopted was the development of a set of design guidelines and implementation steps specifically for this study. And what I have shown you here are just some of the key elements that have been going into that. We've utilized, for example, the Transportation Corridor Overlay District, or TCOD policy, the 2007 Design Guidelines Manual, the Route 17 Corridor Study, various case studies and best practices, and then obviously the comprehensive plan as a whole. So we, as far as implementation, it's a combination of the design guidelines, which I'll talk about in a couple of minutes where that specific project is, the development standards that are in the city's zoning ordinance and subdivision ordinance, as well as what's in the Dominion Boulevard corridor study itself, and then various growth timing policies. The the design guidelines that I've mentioned were not part of the original contract, again, partly allowing because of the large size of the study area and the diversity of the 10 sub-planning areas that comprise the study area. It was felt that the design guidelines should be developed later as we were able to assess and determine development trends and plan for areas as they naturally were coming online. As we anticipated and predicted, the study area, the Dominion Boulevard Corridor study area, has been very active and very robust as far as development. This map that you see on this slide is hard to read, and that's actually intentional. What we were just trying to show you is not specific developments. I'm not here to review specific developments that have come through, but really just sort of the magnitude and the scope of overall development proposals, rezonings, use permits, subdivision plans that have been reviewed by the planning department since the study was adopted in 2016. So you can see it's been quite a bit of activity. Most of the activity, again, intentionally, because of the way that the land use plan is structured, have been in the northern parts of the study area, particularly along the Shelly Road corridor from where it intersects with Cahoon Parkway and the shopping center there, and heading south and over to Grassfield High School, with a bit more in the Area 6 that I mentioned earlier over by Dominion Boulevard and Route 17. I would note that most of the development applications that we have seen to date since the adoption of the study have tended to be traditional residential suburban developments. Again, we are working hard and trying to implement the adopted vision from City Council that this be a unique mixed-use walkable area with unique design and unique site plans. And what we have been getting is more traditional residential suburban developments. In fact, we are getting to a point where we are, at some point in the not too distant future, going to be out of balance with the mix of uses that is recommended in the study. We performed a fiscal impact analysis on the overall master land use plan that I showed you earlier, and based on that mix of uses, it showed a good positive net fiscal impact overall to the city. But it's important to maintain that mix and balance of uses. So we are seeing quite a bit of predominance of residential development at this point. Particularly the high-density residential appears to be an area that's going to exceed the recommended ratios that were initially recommended in the study. It looks like we've come offline with the slideshow here. Okay, I don't know if I did that with a button or not, but that's kind of scary, actually. Well, you have the copy of the slideshow in front of you, so I will continue on. The next slide is an example of a development tracking matrix or spreadsheet that we created shortly after the study was adopted to be able to help us track development in real time. The example that I showed in this slide is for the Area 3 or Shelly North area, since that's sort of the most frequently being developed area. And what we do is we show what the original study recommended as far as the number of types of residential units, as well as the number of square footage of non-residential and open space acreage. And we are tracking what has been approved through the process by City Council, what is pending, and then what is proposed. Pending would be that it's before Planning Commission but has not gotten to Council yet, and proposed would be where we've received it but it has not yet gotten to either Planning Commission or City Council. And so we are constantly in real time trying to compare what is being proposed, pending, and approved with what was originally recommended by the study in terms of the ratios of residential and non-residential. So we have these spreadsheets for all 10 of the sub-planning areas. This is just one example that I'm showing you here. So as part of the development review process, as I mentioned earlier, we are using, when developments are occurring in the study area, we are using the policies and guidelines of the study as part of our staff review of these developments. The next several slides that I have here are just to show you some examples of actual developments that have come through Planning Commission and City Council, and it's kind of a before and after, if you will. So looking at the first one, the first example is Cardinal Meadows, a development up at the convergence of Shillelagh and Cahoon Parkway. On the left, you see the exhibit that was originally submitted as part of the original rezoning application, and on the right would be a final site plan exhibit. And I know it's a bit hard to see, but you can see some of the differences between what was proposed and what we ended up with in terms of meeting the objectives, the open space, the connectivity, those types of things. The differences you can see for yourselves. The next one would be Grassfield Crossing, a little further south on Shillelagh Road. Again, the top image is the exhibit that was submitted as part of the rezoning. And to give you a little more of your bearings, so Shillelagh Road would be on the left side of the diagram, and then you're moving away to the east with Cahoon Parkway intersecting north to south. The master land use plan, I'm sorry, with Cardinal Meadows, the master land use plan called for urban mixed use, and that is not exactly what we received with this at the end. Grassfield Crossing, again, the master land use plan calls for high-density residential closest to Shillelagh Road, and then medium-density residential more to the east. More or less got there with this one, but still some differences. The next example development is Shillelagh Commons, also on Shillelagh Road. The master land use plan in this area, again, calls for high-density residential at Shillelagh Road, and then medium density moving away to the east. And you can sort of see the before and after, if you will, from rezoning to kind of the final site plan. And then finally, the final example is the Lindsay rezoning, which is north of Dominion Boulevard, just north of it, and that's technically in what we call Area 4. The top image shows the proposed development pattern overlaying with the master land use plan designations. And this one's a little easier to see the differences between what the master land use plan recommended and what was actually proposed and finalized. You see the recreation areas and the stormwater management and some of the differences there. So again, the purpose of that review was not to sort of rehash those applications, but just to give you an example of what we are trying to do in the development review process to implement the adopted vision that City Council approved for these areas. Again, to achieve the overall master vision for the area and the mix and balance of uses. Oh, okay, so we're back online here. I'm going to try and be very careful here. Thank you for whoever did that. So these are the exhibits that I just went through. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the big elements to the implementation of the study has been to create a design guidelines manual. As I mentioned earlier, we have one for the entire city, the 2007 Design Guidelines Manual that was adopted by Council for gateways, infill development, and types of development by our overlay districts. This one would be specific to the Dominion Boulevard corridor study. It's in a draft stage. We still have a ways to go with it, but we have made quite a bit of progress. And what I've shown you here are just some sample images of and illustrations of what we're moving towards to try to give form and content to the policies that are in the study. The image on the left is actually one of the first initial pages for the manual that shows kind of the vision, which is to pay homage, if you will, to the rich history of the area, the Dismal Swamp Canal, the refuge, the trail. And we have tried to infuse with a lot of the recommended design elements things that you would sort of associate with that type of thing, cedar shakes and other types of design and architectural elements. But I've just kind of picked a selection of images here to show that the manual will be covering all types of development that are allowable in the area, urban mixed use, retail, industrial, single-family homes, both in the suburban area as well as perhaps in the southern part of the study areas as clusters. The photograph that's in the lower left is supposed to kind of represent the Central Park, as we call it, which is a real key feature of Area 3 that we are working hard to try to make a reality. So just to wrap up, be very careful here. Just to mention a few challenges and opportunities to leave you with as I conclude. As I sort of mentioned earlier, one of the big challenges is to adhere to the study's master planned and fiscally balanced mix of land uses. That does continue to be a challenge. Also providing adequate infrastructure in a timed manner that achieves the planned vision. Infrastructure is always a key part of any development scenario or area plan, and we are monitoring that closely. We also see a lot of opportunities. There's a tremendous opportunity to establish the Dominion Boulevard corridor as a major activity center and a regional employment center with unique and quality design elements reflecting the area. We don't want to replicate other parts of Chesapeake. We really want this to be a unique experience and a unique employment center for Chesapeake. We also feel like that there's a great opportunity to leverage successful development in this area, in the study area, which will enable us to expand infrastructure responsibly to benefit the Chesapeake Executive or Chesapeake Regional Airport and other Route 17 TCOD target areas. You might recall a few years ago that City Council amended the TCOD policy to extend the TCOD target area down Route 17, actually all the way to the North Carolina border. So there are some opportunities to leverage the successes of this study area to benefit other parts of the city. So with that, I conclude my presentation, and I thank you again for the time and the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Woodward. Appreciate it.
I have a question, please.
Question, Mr. Woodward.
First of all, thank you very much, sir.
Sure.
I know we've been sitting here, and I've been on this council, this commission for 9 years, and a lot of the stuff that we have approved zoning was residential. There's an old saying, until you have the people to buy something, you're not going to have a store to sell it. And now we have the people there who are going to buy it. They have the consumers. So hopefully we'll start seeing more and more marketing availabilities come out for people to spend their money. Also, with the implementation of the interstate system, I don't know what the time frame of that is. Historically, when you have an interstate and they have interchanges, that means it's going to build gas stations, hotels, et cetera, which I think will try to offset the balance, so to speak, of too many residences in this area and not enough businesses. So hopefully in the future we can look at that. And once again, I don't know what the time frame is. Of course, the big thing to me has always been HRSD and their availability to service the area. Right now we're doing hopscotch. When the city did not choose to build a system to go all the way down to the line, so be it. But now we're doing hopscotch. So hopefully with your guidance and staff keeps recommending ways to fix this, we can keep on going. But thank you for what you're doing.
I appreciate you saying that, and I agree. I mean, we are monitoring the mix and balance of uses, but I think, and you're certainly right. As the economic development folks would say, you need the rooftops to support other forms of development, and I think we are at a point where we can really try to promote that now, promote a mix of uses. As far as the interstate, I don't know the current status. I know that I believe that the state of North Carolina had their General Assembly had adopted a resolution endorsing converting it to an interstate status. With this study, we did try to plan for that. We tried to plan for some of the street networks and the grid pattern that would enable Route 17 and Dominion Boulevard to become an interstate at some point, and have the necessary spacing of intersections that the transportation officials require. We utilize the TCOD policy with the mix of land uses closest to Route 17 and Dominion Boulevard, again, anticipating the potential of an interstate type of corridor at some point in the future. So we are monitoring residential development that desires to locate right up to the Dominion Boulevard and Route 17 versus more commercial development. So,
Mr. Gerloff.
Yep, thank you. Really good update, really appreciate it. And also, I'm glad to hear that you're going to be looking at possible imbalances, you know, how well we're sticking with the plan, where the deviations are. So if you see significant deviations, do you anticipate updating the plan? Would that wait until a comp plan review? Or what do you think the game plan would be to fix the imbalance?
that's a good question. Well, what we typically do whenever we do a comprehensive plan review and update, we will look at the land use plan, and we will look at historical trends and patterns in various parts of the city, and if it appears that there's a strong impetus to make some adjustments, we will certainly take a look at that. And as far as this particular area, this particular study, we're not at a point where we see a flaw perhaps in the study. We're just monitoring it closely, and we believe that with various conditions improving, coming out of the pandemic, and the economy showing signs of strengthening, we've seen other reports and indicators that retail, perhaps in different forms and variations, but retail is going to rebound. That we will just continue to monitor but make adjustments if necessary.
How about the Frank Williams Farm? I know that's outside of the study area, but obviously that's been a changed condition since the plan came about. I mean, do you expand the plan? Do you just recognize the influence that it could have on the area and adjust that way? Do you not acknowledge it? I mean,
as far as the Williams tract, as you know, the land use plan was amended in 2018, December of 2018, to designate a portion of the Williams tract, the lower third, as a light industrial type PUD. The Gateway Virginia Innovation District is the formal name of the land use designation. I am not aware of any formal proposals that have been brought forth, since that time. But that land use plan change designation is something that we're mindful of. And as I mentioned in my prepared presentation, we believe that the successful development of the Dominion Boulevard Corridor Study area, including necessary infrastructure extensions and improvements, will potentially have an impact for the airport area, but ultimately potentially the Williams tract someday.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Woodward.
You're welcome.
And this vice chair has no comments, so we are adjourned until the meeting at 7 o'clock. Good evening. The Planning Commission public hearing for June 9th, 2021 is now in session. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. For those who wish to participate, you are invited to remain standing for the invocation. Commissioner Gilbert will lead the Pledge of Allegiance, and the invocation will be led by Commissioner Gerloff.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in the invocation. We gather here this evening out of concern for our city of Chesapeake, the communities in which we live, and our fellow citizens. Give us open minds, wisdom, and empathy as we discuss the issues before us tonight. In your name we pray, amen.
Please be seated, and as a reminder, please silence your telephones. I would like to welcome each of you to our meeting tonight. Thank you for taking part in the business of our city. Bear with me. This is a new experience here. Mr. McNamara, please call the roll.
Commissioner Barlow.
Present.
Commissioner Deneau.
Present.
Commissioner Ellis.
Present.
Commissioner Gerloff.
Here.
Commissioner Gilbert.
Here.
Commissioner Stoniak.
Here.
Commissioner Steiner.
Present.
Commissioner Williams.
Here.
Chairman Sweeney is excused.
Excused. The minutes for May 12th, 2021, public hearing are being considered for approval. Do the commissioners have any corrections or revisions? If there are no corrections, the minutes are approved by unanimous consent. The commission rules and procedures are available at the front desk as you entered the chamber. They are also available online at our website. We ask that you follow these guidelines. Each agenda item is heard as presented in the official agenda. The case before the commission will be presented in summary by the planning director or designee, along with the staff's recommendation. Parties who have filled out and submitted a speaker's card to the secretary prior to 7 p.m. will be allowed to speak. Those in support will be called first, followed by those in opposition. Speakers' time limits are set by the Planning Commission bylaws. At the end of the public comment period for the item under consideration, any commissioner may call an individual speaker back to the podium to conclude their remarks or to answer commissioners' questions. The commission asks that speakers not be repetitive or redundant in their comments. Petitions, documents, pictures, or information for the commission's consideration may be presented and provided to the planning department staff who is seated to my left. Speakers shall, to my left? Jimmy. It's like things are different. Things are different. Speakers shall address the commission from the podium only when called by the secretary or a commissioner. After the speakers, there is discussion among the commission members. Speakers who violate the rules of the public hearing will receive one verbal warning within the course of the evening. Upon Planning Commission action of either approval or denial, the remainder of the items shall be heard by City Council next month on either the third or the fourth Tuesday beginning at 6:30 p.m. in this chamber, unless otherwise announced tonight. Citizens may contact the city clerk's office or the planning department the Friday after the Planning Commission meeting to find out which date the item will be heard by city councils. Items for a continuance or withdrawal. The first order of business is the consideration of requests to withdraw or continue an item. Normally, the commission allows an item to be withdrawn without further discussion. In the case of continuances, it is the Planning Commission's policy to continue the item as requested by the applicant. Mr. McNamara, are there any requests for withdrawal or continuance?
Yes, we have 4 items requesting a continuance.
Could you please read those applications into the record?
Item number 1 is PLN REZ 2020-005. This is Montessori Academy parking lot. And this is a conditional zoning reclassification of 0.45 acres from R15 Residential District to B2 General Business District located north of 1468 Kempsville Road in the Greenbrier Planning Area. And based on the applicant's request, staff recommends that PLN REZ 2020-005 be continued to the October 13th, 2021 Planning Commission public hearing. Next item is PLN REZ 2020-006. This is 512 Battlefield Boulevard. Applicants Beco Enterprises LLC, owners Gateway Construction 2 Incorporated, agency Bass Knight, Kinzer, Leftwich, and Knuckles PC. The proposal is a conditional zoning reclassification of 1.8 acres from RMF1 Multifamily Residential District to B5 Urban Business District for a medical office building, located at 512 Battlefield Boulevard North in the Rivercrest Planning Area. And based on the applicant's request, staff recommends that PLN REZ 2020-006 be continued to the July 14th, 2021 Plan Commission public hearing. Item number 3, PLN REZ 2020-024 Portlock Square. Applicant is Bainbridge Properties Incorporated. Owners is Bainbridge Properties Incorporated. Brittany Yvette Taylor, Nestor D. Rodriguez Aguadello, Sheila M. Robertson, Marcel Curry, Jordan Summers, Jotia Q. Jones, Demetrius L. Shabazz, and Lorenzo D. Cox Jr., and this agent is Williams Mullen. The proposal is a conditional zoning reclassification of approximately 1 acre from B5 Urban Business District and RMF1 Multifamily Residential District to RMF1 Multifamily Residential District, located at 64-1 Ragged Island Road in the South Norfolk Planning Area. And based on the applicant's request, staff recommends that PLN REZ 2020-024 be continued to the July 14th, 2021 Plan Commission public hearing. And finally, we have PLN Comp 2021-001, resolution to amend the 2050 Master Transportation Plan to remove the Southeastern Expressway, Parkway, and Greenbelt in its entirety. And staff recommends that PLN Comp 2020-001 be continued to the September 8th, 2021 Plan Commission public hearing. And this concludes our request for continuance.
Thank you. Mr. Steiner, are there any speakers on these items for withdrawal or continuance?
There are no speakers on items for continuance or withdrawal.
I will accept a motion to continue or withdraw the items as read by the planning director.
Madam Chair, before a motion is made, I'd like to ask Mr. McNamara a question. Regarding the Montessori Academy parking lot, it looks like it was filed last year, according to the number system. They want a 4-month continuance even further? Is there a reason for that that's available to us?
Yes, sir. There have been changes to the application due to some unfortunate circumstances regarding the landowner and their family. So they are reassessing their request and are working towards a solution.
Would it be fair to say possibly COVID had an influence on this?
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you very much. Madam Chair, I'll make a motion we continue items 1 through 4 on the official agenda for the designated time period as requested by the staff.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Prepare to vote. Please vote. Mr. McNamara, please record the vote.
By a vote of 8-0, with the abstention of Chairman Sweeney, or with the absence of Chairman Sweeney, the motion carries.
Thank you. Public hearing consent agenda. The second order of business is consideration of the consent agenda. The consent agenda contains those items that the planning staff believes are unopposed and which have a favorable staff recommendation. Should there be 3 or more speakers in opposition, the commissioners will move the item to the regular agenda. The commission will hear speakers, both those in favor and those opposed to the application at one time. Speakers in support, when called, may stand in place and state, "I stand by for questions." Then the commission will vote on all of the consent items at one time. Once the commission has approved the item as part of the consent agenda, it is deemed approved and will not be discussed any further. Speakers on the items placed on the consent agenda will be given a total of 5 minutes to address the commission. If you have an objection to an item being placed on the consent agenda, please note your objection when you address the commission. Before we begin, are there any consent agenda items any commissioner would like to have moved to the regular agenda? Watson.
I'd like to move Watson Woods to the regular agenda.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. And Mr. McNamara, please prepare the vote. Please vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Has to be read in the record. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I'll go ahead and start. Agenda item number 5 is PLN Use 2021-002. The project is Carolina Road Horse Boarding and Veteran Counseling. Applicant and owners are Kayla and Kyle Arestivo, and the proposal is a conditional use permit to operate a horse boarding facility and equine assisted therapy business as a level 2 home occupation and request for an alternative parking surface located at 2400 Carolina Road, located in the southern Chesapeake planning area. And based on the findings listed in the official agenda, staff recommends that PLN Use 2021-002 be approved with stipulations and the alternative parking surface. As noted, agenda item number 6 will be moved to the regular agenda per request, which takes us to agenda item number 7, PLN Use 2021-007, City Park Flagpole, applicant owners, City of Chesapeake. Proposal is a conditional use permit to allow a 100-foot flagpole height at City Park. And this is located at 900 City Park Drive, located in the Greenbrier planning area. And based on the findings contained in the official agenda, staff recommends that PLN Use 2021-007 be approved with stipulation. And this concludes the consent agenda.
Thank you. Let me see. Speakers, please. Do we have speakers on these items?
We have 3 speakers all standing by for questions. First on agenda item number 5, Kayla Arestivo, and then on item 7, Mr. Mike Barber and Ms. Anna Elizovic.
Madam Chair, can I ask Mr. Barber a question regarding item number 7?
Please. Mr. Barber?
Good evening. Good to see you again, sir. Thanks for getting this done. Quick question. The aluminate that's in the middle of the Jubilee site, is that high enough, or is that, I guess, shorter than what the flagpole is going to be?
That's 100 foot, but it's on an elevated berm.
So it's basically going to be the same height as that?
Yes, if you go from the ground up, that's about 20 feet higher because of the elevation of
That's
the,
a good reference point, is what I was asking.
Yes.
for. Thank you very much. Good to see you again.
thank you.
Madam Chairperson, I have a question for item number 5 to the
Thank you.
Arrestivos. They're here for, hey. Hey. So what I see here is that one of the stipulations is that customer visits are limited to 1, but you have the possibility of up to 10 horses. Are the customers for the therapy separate from the boarders?
Sure, yes.
And the operation of hours that is restricted would be for the customers for the therapy as opposed to the boarders with their horses who would have access to their horses at any time?
Okay, so yes. Okay, backtrack to me. 1 counseling session at a time.
Okay.
So that can only happen 1 at a time, and per HIPAA rules, that's pretty standard. We're out there in the open, it's on a farm, so I would never have more than 1 client on site at a time because then you're violating HIPAA compliancy. And then in terms of the horses, we allotted for 10 horses. When I say we, I'm talking about my conversations with Mr. Bell, but we allotted for 10 horses because that's just what we didn't want to exceed. That was too much for me. But 5 of those are my own personal horses.
Okay, and how many acres do you have?
15.
Okay. Do we need to separate those 2 things to make it clear? I guess I'll ask Ms. Lindley, is it clear the way it's written, the way that I've asked the question that makes sense to a horse person, right? Because boarding is separate than the therapy.
Correct.
But the way that it's written here, is that clear enough?
I felt that the way that legal was presented was clear because it talks about horse boarding as one use where the people are going to come and go at certain times.
Correct.
And then there's equine therapy counseling, which you can have 1 therapy session at a time.
Correct.
And then the staff report further illuminates the fact that there's these 2 kind of endeavors that are tangentially related, but they're going to both be kind of separate home occupations. And that is why we specifically listed both of them in the legal to call them out separately.
Okay, that makes sense to me, and it makes sense to me as a horse owner. I just wanted to be sure that it made sense to everyone else. All right, that's it.
Okay.
I've got,
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? At this point, the consent agenda is as follows. 5 and 7. Mr. McNamara, you read them into record, correct? Mr. Steiner, do we have any speakers?
We have no more speakers.
No more speakers, okay. Fellow commissioners, after hearing the testimony of the speakers, are there any items you would like moved to the regular public agenda hearing at this time?
Madam Chair, if I could, I would like to make a motion. I take items 5 and 7, leave them on the consent agenda, and I will move for approval of both those items, number 5 and 7, is listed in the official agenda with stipulations.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Now prepared to vote. Please vote. Mr. McNamara, record the vote.
Motion carries 8-0, noting the absence of Chairman Sweeney.
The next order of business is the regular public hearing agenda. The agenda items will be heard in the following order: 6, 8, and 9. When there are 3 or fewer speakers, each speaker will have 5 minutes to present comments to the commission. If there are 4 or more speakers, each speaker will have 3 minutes to present comments to the commission. Mr. McNamara, please present the first public hearing item.
Agenda item number 6, PLN REZ 2020-015, Project Watson Woods, applicant Jolliffe Road Properties LLC, owners Jolliffe Road Properties LLC, Frank C. Metal, Tanya L. Robertson, agency is Parish Lane Design Group. Proposals of conditional zoning reclassification of approximately 5.6 acres from A1 Agricultural District to R15S Residential District, located on the western portions of 48112, 4820, and 4824 Charlton Drive, and the southeastern portion of 1502 Harlequin Court in the Western Branch Planning Area. And Mr. Bostic will offer staff's findings and recommendation.
Staff finds that the proposed rezoning conforms to the land use designation of low-density residential in the 2035 land use plan. The proposed single-family residential land use is consistent with the comprehensive plan action strategy that states that each land use should be located on an appropriate site in terms of size, access, environmental conditions, community facilities, and compatibility with its neighbors. The application passes all level of service tests, and departmental review comments indicate that all necessary public facilities and services are adequate to serve this proposed use. However, staff recommends that PLN-REZ-2020-015 be continued to the July 14, 2021 Planning Commission hearing.
Mr. Steiner, do we have any speakers on this regular agenda?
There are no speakers on this item.
Do we have a motion by a commissioner to continue Watson Woods?
Vice Commissioner, or Commissioner Deneau, I would like to make a motion to continue PLN-REZ-2020-015 Watson Woods was it 30 days? 30 days.
Second.
Thank you. Prepare to vote, please. Vote, and Mr. McNamara, please record the vote.
Motion carries 8-0, noting the absence of Chairman Sweeney.
Thank you. Mr. McNamara, please present the next public hearing item.
Item number 8, PLN REZ 2018-018. Project is Crestfield. Applicant owner Elbow Properties LLC. Agency American Engineering Associates. The proposal is a zoning reclassification of approximately 120 acres from B1 Neighborhood Business District, A1 Agricultural District, and R15S Residential District to R10S Residential District and A1 Agricultural District. Located on Elbow Road, approximately 5,600 feet east of the intersection of Elbow Road and Centerville Turnpike North, located in the Greenbrier planning area. And staff offers the following findings. The location of the proposed use is not wholly consistent with the 2035 comprehensive plan land use, as it is located predominantly within a business commercial land use area. The proposed use is compatible with surrounding area. However, the applicant has declined to provide assurances that community design will be on par with other development in the vicinity. The existing proffers on the property require the dedication of a developable school site. The subject site represents an opportunity for the applicant to fulfill this obligation. And significant development potential exists with the underlying zoning on the remaining portion of the Transamerica property, and the approval of this application will circumvent the delivery of proffered impact mitigation from the Transamerica development. Therefore, staff recommends denial of PLN REZ 2018-018. However, if Planning Commission desires to recommend approval, proffers have been included for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. McNamara. Mr. Steiner, do we have any speakers for this agenda item?
We have a total of 6 speakers, 5 in favor and 1 opposed.
Please call the first speaker.
Brian Plumley.
Good evening, everyone. Chair, Vice Chair Deneau, Planning Commissioners, very nice to see you this evening. My name is Brian Plumley. I'm with the law firm of Poolbrook Plumley. We're at 1403 Greenbrier Parkway here in Chesapeake. That's our Chesapeake office. We seek your favorable recommendation to downzone 120 acres from B1 with 215 units to 54 acres of A1 and 150 R10 units on 65 acres. Dragus Companies has partnered with the owner to build 150 new homes priced from approximately $500,000 with beautiful elevations like Dragus Homes in Hickory and Edinburgh with generous community facilities. This is a 65-unit reduction from current zoning. The staff agrees the use is compatible with the surrounding uses. The Dragus product is excellent. The application meets the levels of service, and the application is a downzoning, and the proffers are lawful. Recent data shows a tremendous drop in the number of homes for sale in Chesapeake compared to 2020. Home ownership is out of reach for many residents, including young adults who want to start their families. Of the city's 250,000 residents, 70,000 plus are over 50 years of age. Chesapeake's population is trending older, and fewer retirees are leaving their single-family homes. The affordability of housing is made worse when excellent projects are delayed or rejected. Prices are inflated not only by normal market forces, but as a result of delays caused during review. As the Planning Commission for the City of Chesapeake, we ask that the availability and affordability of homes be factors equal to the issues of compatibility and levels of service. We have not, to this date, after 3 continuances of this matter, heard of any objection from the general public. City engineering determined the application is exempt from levels of service for transportation, but despite the exemption, the applicant opted out of the statutory test for unreasonable proffers to offer nearly $1 million in value for transportation improvements, including 12 acres of dedicated road expansion, saving eminent domain costs and acquisition costs and delays. Given the $500,000 and 12 acres of right-of-way proffered with this application, your favorable recommendation tonight provides immediate relief to communities along Elbow Road. These residents regularly speak out for road improvements, and our client is offering major road contributions even though its application is a downzoning and exempt. The Southeastern Expressway has been is being removed from the 2050 Transportation Plan and is no longer a finding of concern by the city staff. We respectfully request the Planning Commission advance these road improvements for the real expansion of Elbow, saving tax dollars and making the roads safe. The project will not exceed also the levels of service for schools. It is below 100% at each facility, and the applicant still proffers per unit enough to reach $238,000 in cash for the schools. This application is a carve-out, and you've heard about this from the larger approved track, but on its own merits, it stands alone with significant proffers tailored for the Dragus-Crestfield community. And I know I've exceeded, but I'm going to make it up for the rest of these speakers very quickly. This downzoning meets the goals of contributing beautiful, compatible housing, road improvements with cash proffers for roads and schools for your general reserve fund, and property for the city right-of-way inventory that total well in excess of $1.1 million for only 150 units on 65 acres. That's approximately $7,300 in value per unit. Our team has worked tirelessly with the planning staff to address concerns regarding the larger track, and the report shows that we're applying these 150 units towards the trigger points for the proffers on the associated track. The owner is also, as you have been informed by the staff, resolving the school needs in a separate mod that's not before you directly tonight, but shall be before council alongside this approval. We ask you to recommend this project to meet the immediate housing and road needs of the city of Chesapeake and its residents today. I have here Andrea Kilmer, who's the president and CEO of Garcia Companies, to answer questions, Pete Berkheimer, professional engineer with American Engineering, Nicholas Baum, the vice president of planning and business development for Dragus Companies, and Valerie Wilkerson, former CFO, with a lot of historical data regarding this property to answer any of your questions this evening. I greatly appreciate the extended time I received. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Plumley. Next speaker.
The next speakers are standing by. Pete Berkheimer, Andrea Kilmer, Nick Baum, Valerie Wilkinson. And then our next speaker will be Andy Mills in opposition.
I live right next to the area that's being proposed.
If you would state your name and address for the
Andrew
record.
Mills, 1936 Elbow Road. We got a mailing a year or two ago that was NOA 2006-5097. That was I believe, the bigger tract, and I believed that it was to be returned to wetlands apart from a smaller area up on Centerville Turnpike. So I'm kind of surprised that there's now a building allowed on this piece of land that was to be wetlands. That's primarily my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
No more speakers. The others are standing by.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Commissioner Ellis.
Yes, I'd like to call Mr. Burkheimer. Yes, good evening. How you doing? Could you address the wetlands concerns that the previous speaker had? Just speak about how the wetlands rules have changed, and maybe have affected the overall property, because I know that was another concern we had in our pre-meeting on this. So if just something you could speak to.
Yes, sir. I'll do that right after announcing that I'm Pete Burkheimer, practicing at 830 Greenbrier Circle, Suite 110 in Chesapeake, Virginia. When the owners, the owning group, purchased this land in the early 1980s, it wasn't jurisdictional by any definition that was in effect at that time. So they bought it not as distressed land, but as good, valuable land. And were shocked to find out, as all of us, many of us were, in about 1986, in my case, when I first became aware of what was then called bottomland hardwood swamp, or jurisdictional non-tidal wetlands, or winter wet woods. I'm not going to give you a long discussion, because it hurts too much, of the episodes that I've been through respecting wetlands of all types, but trying to parse through the amazing changes and evolutions of definitions of what is wet. There was originally the 1987 Manual for Delineation, and you can tell by its date, its name, what date it was developed. There was a 1989 manual designed to replace it, and then shortly thereafter, a decision was made to revert to the 1987 manual. There have been other things below the delineation manual level, such as regulatory guidance letters that have been issued by various regional headquarters of the Corps of Engineers. I know that my client has spent a 7-figure amount of money trying to find ways to salvage just a portion of the great amount of land lost to jurisdictional wetlands. And there is no expectation that much more, if any, will be salvaged, but this land is prior converted cropland, and so it enjoys an automatic exemption from wetland status. The land which is the subject of where the 150 lots of Crestfield would go. So it is at least one piece that is unquestionably non-jurisdictional. But the remainder of it, the remainder of the subject of RC 9508, for example, is known to be mostly, if not all, wetlands, depending on the definition du jour.
Great, thank you.
I'd like to ask Mr. Burkheimer a question, if I could. So some of that is not cropland currently, but is in fact forested. Is that correct? That will be taken out in order to do the development? There are some trees. How many acres of established tree canopy might be lost in this project?
There were probably some small, and I don't know if an aerial photograph is available. There. Yes. There is an area of trees in the middle. Mm-hmm. I would estimate that of the 55 acres, 54 acres that will hold the 150 lots, that perhaps 2 acres of trees there are subject to be removed. Not all of those will be removed, only those that are in the way of streets or house pads. But we haven't done construction plans yet, so I would say of that 5 acres, probably 2 or 3 of it would be lost due to it being where houses or streets needed to go.
And so most of what's being put into A1, it would be the forested bit in the back?
That's correct.
Okay.
Essentially all of it.
You're right. Okay. And I don't know that you're the person to answer the question, but why rezone to A1 as opposed to conservation if we think that we couldn't build on it anyway, and it's obviously not being used for agriculture because it is forested?
Right. I'm as good as any to answer that, I guess. That question's been discussed many times over the years that we've pursued this application. The best answer I can give you is this. There's little hope, but there's not no hope that they'll ever get a few more units out of this. There were some areas up to the north, up near the Virginia Beach line, for example, that they were very close to an arrangement years ago that would have gotten a couple of hundred units on 60 acres of land. Still a small percentage of the overall project. But in that project, you'll see how this ties in just a second. In that project, that 60 acres was sort of like raisin bread. If the bread was uplands and the raisins were wetlands, it was just all intermingled, totally intermingled. And the total amount of wetlands that would be impacted by that would be more than the normal 1 or 2 acres that the agencies fairly willingly give up with proper mitigation. So who knows what the rules will be in the future or what will be the attitudes of the people who administer those rules. But just as an example, totally as an example, if left in A1 or put down to A1, that area could theoretically be traded, not as, because it's already wetlands, but if a preservation easement were put over it at that future time as part of a package of mitigations and compensations for getting that 60 acres back in play, then that might be just what it takes to make that 60 acres happen. Whereas if it's rezoned to C1 now as a part of the way C1 zoning works in the city, you'd have to put a preservation or conservation easement on it right now, and that leverage would be gone. Frankly, I don't hold much hope that there will be any future development. And if there is some, it won't be much. It might be 10% of the acreage that's left. But if you could put yourself in Ms. Kilmer's and Ms. Wilkinson's shoes and Mr. Giulotti's shoes and think about what they've walked through for the last 38, 39 years, trying to salvage as much as they could of what they paid good money for in good faith, not thinking it was wetlands, not having any idea it was wetlands, you'd know that they wanted to try to get what they can out of it, knowing it won't be much. I apologize for the long answer, but that's the best I can do for you. Thank you.
Question, please.
Commissioner Williams?
If in the future this 55 acres of A1 is deemed to be able to build, you'd have to come back and request that with us. Is that correct?
Absolutely, sir.
And you're now
I
limited.
mean, unless you wanted to come in and do 5 3-acre lots or something of that nature, which is by right in A1. Anything other than a de minimis development like that would
That would be
require
defeating the
rezoning to
purpose of
some
building anything.
district.
But you're proffered at 150 lots right now. You can't do anything more than that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion?
I'd like to ask a question of Mr. McNamara. Can we expand upon the discussion from the pre-meeting on the overarching proffers as they stand, so we have a better understanding, specifically as it applies to the schools?
So the Crestfield rezoning as it stands right now is proffering a cash contribution of $15.91 per unit for the 150 dwellings that are being proposed. Now, this is a carve-out, as we've discussed on multiple occasions, and the land that is not a part of the Crestfield is still subject to the Transamerica proffers that were rezoned back in 1995. And those proffers specifically required the dedication of a school site somewhere between 15 and 20 acres in size. It's been subject of multiple iterations and multiple movements through the years where there was a site that was dedicated, but it was deemed by schools and city to be undevelopable and was returned at that point in time, in which case there was an agreement that was agreed upon between the city and the schools and the applicants to help enforce those proffers. But as it stands right now, those proffers are in full effect, and there is a school that is required as part of the Transamerica property.
You had mentioned some valuations, and it sounded like there was a difference in the valuation that the applicant was saying on the land being proffered, and your numbers, at least I had written, it was like $315K or something. Was what you could you state that again so that I have an understanding of really kind of what the trade-off is here?
Yes, let me get my notes real quick here, if you don't mind. I believe the difference in the valuation dealt with the proffered land with regards to the roadway. So not necessarily with the school site, but with the roadway portion. And that difference, based on our findings, was the applicant valued it at $315,000, and the city estimates valued between $67,500 and $112,500.
But that's the sort of the in-kind right-of-way contribution, not the school site. So I'm trying to get my head around sort of the fixed amount that they're offering voluntarily.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
All right. So if we're talking about the school sites particularly, the estimate for the school site, and this is unimproved, so without the improvements, the estimate came in at $2.5 million. And the cash contribution with the Crestfield development with the $1,591 per unit comes up to $238,650.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions, comments?
I have some questions for Mr. Tate. So recognizing that we can't consider level of service because it's considered a down zoning, and so we're looking at what would be an F between Elbow and Centerville. One of the things going forward that keeps coming up is the idea that the Elbow Road improvements are funded and therefore aren't as much of a consideration as they might have been. I think the last time you and I talked about this actually was in 2019 with a different application and the improvements. And whether that means fully funded, whether we're moving forward with it, whether we have an actual project. I mean, there's a variety, right? Like, so we talk about Battlefield and we've got nothing, right? And then we talk about this. And could you just clarify a little bit what it means to be funded and what that means and what projected date we might actually see improvement on Elbow Road?
Okay. Let me start back to the beginning of your comments, which said it's exempt and you can't consider level of service. That's not completely accurate. The level of service policy is established so that there is a consistent application of level of service impacts. And of course, there's always intangibles that Planning Commission and City Council can take into consideration as it relates to the broader question of adequate public facilities. So you're not technically prohibited from considering levels of service. So that was the one thing I wanted to point out. Second of all, there's 3 projects in the capital budget. When you brought that to my attention, I went back and looked at it. And 2 of the projects have been around for a while, and they're both between Centerville Turnpike and the city of Virginia Beach. One is the actual road improvements to buy right away and construct 2 new lanes with adequate width and with shoulders. And that's a fully funded project. The design's underway. I was recently provided a schedule that said, somewhere towards the middle to fall of 2013 is when they anticipate that project beginning construction. So that's the roadway improvements. To go along with the roadway improvements, there's a bridge. I'm sorry?
Did you say 2013?
Oh, I'm sorry, 2023.
2023.
Yeah. I've been here 35 years, so I'm like in overtime. So I'm still going back to 2013 when I didn't have 30 years.
We're all living in the past.
Yeah, exactly. So 2023 is when that's scheduled to go forward. The bridge is also begun under design, and there's the hope that that'll also have a similar schedule, and that would also be 2023. So that's 2 years out. That's the stretch of road or the segment of road that this project's on. There was another piece of Elbow Road that was more recently added to the capital budget between Butt Station Road and Centerville Turnpike. And the city recognized that that had some similar roadway geometry deficiencies, and so that was added to the capital budget. And if you look at that in the current proposed capital budget, that's funded about 85% in the current 5-year plan, with about 15% in the out years. So it's kind of odd that it's such a small amount. What I would read into that is it's just towards the end of the 5-year budget, and there's anticipation that part of the construction would occur after that 5-year window.
Okay, and we don't anticipate any issues with wetland delineations or anything through that to improve the road? All of those things are moving forward at this time?
Well, they've begun the analysis of the wetlands permits. I don't believe they've secured the permits, but usually by this point, they've at least known what is the scope of the wetlands issues that will arise. So I can't give you a certainty there's a permit or there won't be a permit, but I think there's a higher confidence level where they're at in the design phase that won't be an issue.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Tate.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just speaking on that issue, now I know that within the subdivisions to the south of Elbow, there was a right-of-way reservation to extend Elbow essentially to Butt Station Road's terminus. Is there any plan on actually executing on that anytime soon with these future projects?
Yes. That right-of-way was established, or at least the portion that goes through the properties that have developed on the south side of Elbow Road. That doesn't take you all the way to Butt Station Road, but there is the anticipation or the desire on the part of the city to have that as the new alignment and not need the portion between Centerville and Butt Station Road. Now, unfortunately, that also involves wetlands, and one of the things on a new alignment that the Corps frequently does is they look for a purpose and need, and it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that they'll say, do you need a new alignment that goes through wetlands if there's an existing corridor that could be improved? And for that reason, I think the city's best to kind of hedge their bets and maintain the possibility of both the preferred alignment that would be on a new alignment or the other. Now, when we talked about the road improvements between Centerville Turnpike and Virginia Beach Boulevard that are funded, scheduled for construction in 2023, that doesn't go all the way to Centerville Turnpike. It really leaves off where one of those developments previously constructed improvements for approximately 3/4 of a mile. Don't hold me to that, but basically heading east from Centerville Turnpike to just about where the church is were improved by one of the developments there.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Yeah, one further question. Mr. Plumlee, can I ask you one? Thank you, Mr. Tate.
Yes, sir.
Based on Mr. Tate's talking about 2013 and now 2023, what would be your projected time if this passes us and if it goes to council and if it passes? What would your projected start time and completion time be on your project?
That's a great question for probably Mr. Berkheimer, but I will tell you my experience has been several years to accomplish this. It's not overnight. It takes a lot of planning, construction drawings, submissions, approval, subdivision plans, plats, recordings, travels a lot through these offices of the city and takes a while to get ready. But I'm sure Mr. Berkheimer can give you more precise dates than that answer.
Yeah, Mr. Berkheimer, you have a better handle on this, I'm sure. We're looking for a start time, completion time. Thank you.
With all the love I can muster for Mr. Tate and his staff and the other city folks, it is an impossibility if this were to be approved by council in July. We would not have construction plans approved until probably April or May of 2022, which would be followed by a period of road and street and drainage and utility construction that would finish out 2022. Now, some housing, if somebody wanted to bond some of those improvements, they could start building some houses in 2022, but they wouldn't get more than maybe some models or 5 or 10% of the houses built by the end of 22, and then you'd be in 23. At the very most, there would be an overlap of months between when traffic started being generated by Crestfield and the road project would be underway.
Is it fair to say this is going to be built in stages, starting at Elbow and going back?
I'm not sure whether they'll do that. Sometimes they'll start in the middle and save the forward units till later, but
yes, we're looking 3 to 4 years before it's completed.
this is probably a 5-year build-out from when housing starts, but that depends on the market. If there's a strong demand and other lots aren't available, it could go in 3 years. I don't in any way see it less than a 3-year program.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Just to add, and I'm sure this many times, I think the failure was about by 3 seconds at this particular intersection. But we anticipate, and that's why we made a significant cash proffer, right-of-way proffer, which we think will remedy a lot of those traffic issues. I just wanted to add that. I'm sure you've heard that, seen that over the last several months. Sorry for the addition.
And Mr. Williams, if I might piggyback on that shameless piggyback, I'd like to say that when I'm involved with the project, we do what we can. We could help with the right-of-way. That's a very large amount of right-of-way. We had that to give it, and we were happy to give it. We would have made an improvement to solve that 3-second level of service failure if we could have. But in that particular situation, there was no right-of-way to accommodate that. You need a public agency to come in and acquire property whenever there's not room enough to squeeze the improvement in. So we threw money at that one, but where we can help with stuff, right-of-way in this case, that's what we do. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Berkheimer. Wondering if you could talk about the other school sites that exist in this area that the city has?
Sure. There are several, but 2 are notable. Right around the corner, I mean, as the crow flies, almost, just a few hundred feet away from Crestfield, is the 115-acre site that the city acquired. It's frequently referred to as the high school site, and I don't know, perhaps one of the staff can point that out on one of the exhibits. And then there's also what I call the Clearfield Elementary School site on Clearfield Road. Both of those, and that's a 20-acre site. Both of those 2 sites, perhaps by coincidence, I don't know, I wasn't involved with either of them in any respect, but I've looked up to see that they were acquired by Chesapeake Public Schools in 2001, or about 5 years after RC 9508 was voted on by City Council. So when folks on our side say you don't need that school, of course, we're not trying to be presumptuous. The school board and the school staff decides whether you need a school or not. But we do know that the 115-acre campus will easily hold a high school, middle school combination comparable to the Hickory pair. And the 20-acre site would hold a full elementary school, a K-6 elementary school. And looking at the school numbers I see with Clearfield and Greenbrier primary existing and B.M. Williams primary existing, I can't see anything in our comp plan that would ever require another K-6 school in that area, and the others are adequate.
So those sites were acquired after you proffered the school site?
That's correct. In fact, I'm not sure, I think the school site that ultimately turned out to be Wetlands was dedicated perhaps in '97, and I'm standing to be corrected, but after the rezoning, by 5 or maybe as much as 6 years, those other school sites were acquired.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we are ready for a motion.
Madam Chairman, I'll go ahead and make a motion. I move to approve public hearing item 8 because the proposed rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan as it is compatible with surrounding residential uses and will not impact the level of service or roads or schools. Further, pending the accelerated proffer modification, if approved, addresses the resolved staff concerns regarding the dedication of the school site and other outstanding proffers remain to the Transamerica site. In addition to that, we also will ask for approval pending all of the conditions and proffers as noted in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. And Mr. McNamara, prepare to vote. Please vote. Oh, discussion,
Call-
sorry.
Discussion.
If I may, Madam Chairman, I appreciate the motion, and because my particular issue of all, I think a lot of mitigation has gone on. You've heard the back and forth, and it's been continued for a long time. My question still surrounds sort of the validity of the overall proffers, which really comes down to the school site, and is it an appropriate trade-off? And then the secondary piece of it is that it's not before us. So, we're challenged with bringing this to be council ready, and we have sort of this piece laying out here. That's why I asked for you that were already in favor to kind of look at that. But I still have a lot of concerns. So I guess, Ms. Lindley, if you don't mind me asking, I always rely on you. So, it's almost as if we're sending this as a contingent recommendation for approval. Is that the way that I read this motion?
I think the motion is based on valid land use factors because it references compatibility with the surrounding community and the fact that the LOS tests are met. But it also does allude to the fact that there is this pending accelerated proffer modification, which may alleviate the findings in number 3 and 4. So I do not believe that it's based on, invalid principles, and it is permissible to reference the upcoming accelerated proffer modification. But as I said earlier, we have no idea what council will do with that, so I don't think that should be the sole basis for the recommendation. And that's the advice I gave to Commissioner Gerloff earlier, is I would not use this potential accelerated proffer modification as the sole basis for a recommendation of approval, because you have no guarantee as to what council will do. However, if you want to use that as a factor you consider and pair it with valid land use factors, which are LOS and compatibility, then I think that's the basis for a valid motion.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion?
Yes, a follow-up to Mr. Steiner. I completely understand what you're coming from about the proffer, but history shows that things have left here and proffers have been added on by the bagfuls when they got to council because changes were needed. And I think there's probably going to be a change needed in this one as well. I think we've discussed this quite thoroughly, and I think it's time to move on with it, whether it be accepted or denied in this stage. But I think City Council, if you look at council ready, it is council ready in a way because it's been looked at, talked about, studied, and I'm in favor of the motion, so I just want to bring that up. Thank you.
Any further discussion? We have a motion made by Commissioner Ellis and second by Commissioner Gerloff. Please prepare to vote. Please vote. Mr. McNamara, record the vote.
By a vote of 7-1, with the noted the noted absence of Chairman Sweeney and the opposition of Commissioner Barlow, the motion carries.
Thank you. Yeah. Mr. McNamara, please present the next public hearing item.
Item number 9 is PLN TXT 2021-001, an ordinance amending Appendix A of the Chesapeake City Code entitled Zoning, Article 16, Section 16-102, Article 17, Section 17-102, and Article 20, Section 20-102 thereof to modify the required components of land use applications to streamline the process and to remove fee schedule from the zoning ordinance to facilitate adoption of the fee schedule as part of the annual budget. And this item is concurrently advertised and will be heard by City Council on June 15th, 2021. And staff offers the following findings. The proposed text amendment will better align application fee rates with the annual budgeting process. The proposed text amendment will remove unnecessary application requirements while still providing the means to request additional material as necessary to provide a full and accurate review of requests. And number 3, the proposed text amendment follows good zoning practices. And based on these findings, staff recommends that PLN TXT 2021-001 version dated May 25th, 2021 be approved.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers?
We have no speakers on this item.
Thank you. Any comments,
Yes,
questions?
I have one question. Mr. McNamara, would it be fair to say that this PLN text 2021-001 is basically cleaning up a problem that we have now?
Actually, I wouldn't say it's necessarily cleaning up a problem, but taking a good look at a process and streamlining it to better the process. So I think this is an improvement on our current process.
And the staff is in full favor of this.
Yes, sir, we are.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I'd just like to make a comment, and during pre-meeting, I asked the attorney about this complying with Virginia law, which it did, and really just kind of commend the staff, and this is really about good government. This is, when you say streamlining, that means that we're eliminating a little bit of bureaucracy. We've got this buried down within our zoning ordinance, which really doesn't necessarily belong there. So I think that we should strongly support this, and it's good for the citizens.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? We're ready for a motion.
I'll move that we approve PLN TXT-2021-01 as indicated in the staff report.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, please prepare to vote. Please vote. Mr. McNamara, please record the vote.
By a vote of 8-0, the motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. McNamara, do you have any items to bring up at this time?
I do not.
Thank you. The cancellation of the June 23rd, 2021 meeting is now being considered due to there being no business. Do the commissioners have any objections to canceling the meeting? Hearing no objections, the June 23rd, 2021 meeting is canceled by unanimous consent. Is there any other unfinished or new business to be brought up for the good of the commission? I'm sorry? Sure. Okay, sure.
Sorry, thank you. On the last slide, what was presented for item number 8, it had, I don't know if the drawing was incorrect or because it's one we haven't seen before and it shows our property in a completely different zone than the prior slide to that. It's the one that had the red on it, a lot of red. Nope. It was the very last one. It was sat there for a long time on that one. Yes. The red area worries me because my property is part of that red area, and yet in the prior slide, it's not.
So I think what's being shown on the screen is the land use plan as opposed to the zoning of the property. So this is a part of our comprehensive plan and is an adopted policy of City Council, so it shows desired land uses in the future, but not necessarily what the zoning is at this point in time. It's not to be confused with an actual zoning map.
Okay, thank you.
If we have no further business to consider, the meeting stands adjourned at 8:01 p.m. Thank you.